Hello guys, today we are going to blindly rank the legends for the first set of Riftbound TCG. Let's go. Alright, so in here we are going to be looking at basically all the legends here for Riftbound, which is the League of Legends card game coming out very soon. So what I'm planning to do today here is to look at these legends, blindly rank them. But what I mean by blindly is I haven't seen these legends, haven't seen any of the cards from the set, so completely going in blind. I'm just gonna rate them based on how they read the cards, going by the experience that I have from other card games. Speaking of which, my main card game before jumping into Riftbound is Final Fantasy TCG. If you guys are not aware of what that is, that card game basically is Magic the Gathering, a little bit more streamlined with Final Fantasy characters. So yeah, a lot of similarities between the two games, and you could tell that a lot of the inspiration came from Magic. I believe the main creator of the game is Magic the Gathering player, so that's where a lot of the stuff comes from. Other card games that I've also played, played Cardfight Vanguard and Yu-Gi-Oh! So very different styles of games from the three. I've also dabbled a little bit in Magic the Gathering and Dragon Ball Super, no Bandai games, that kind of thing. So yeah, when it comes to physical card games, there are definitely a lot of different experiences, different card games. So I've seen a lot of ways how cards could be and all that stuff. In addition to that, we've also had a few digital card games such as Hearthstone, Marvel Snap, and then the rest are like offsprings of other games, Master Duel, MTG Arena, TCG Pocket, Vanguard Zero, that kind of thing. So yeah, in addition to that as well, I played living card games and deck builders in terms of those kind of board games and card games as well. So yeah, definitely a lot of different experiences and different exposure to a bunch of different cards, different mechanics, that kind of thing. So yeah, I'd like to kind of entertain myself going into these cards, seeing what they do, getting excited with them. So a little bit, I guess, of ranking them as well as first impressions on the cards. So just kind of explain my rankings in here. So very much these rankings are heavily influenced by league terms. So we'll start off at the very bottom here. We call it inting. So that is when in league you're purposely just kind of dying over and over. So what we're calling int. So you're inting to the enemy team, basically just on purpose. You just don't basically want to play the game. Feeding is just a little bit less than that. So you're feeding, so you're not intentionally doing what you're wanting or dying, not intentionally playing poorly. But you are still playing poorly. So when it comes to these cards, inting I have is, a card is very poor, reads very poor to myself, and it's probably unplayable. Feeding, and then the card's meh. Winnable. So winnable is basically when you're in a state where you could still win. So with the cards here, I would say they're good cards. They might not be top of the top, but they're very good cards. Or they're good cards, they could still win with them. Winnable, very simple. Next is fed. So when something is fed, they're just super good. When a guy has so many kills, it's hard to stop. So that's what fed is. And then at the top here, so that's what fed. So basically, in terms of the cards, when you're fed, that means the card, I believe, is very good. It's probably meta relevant based on how it reads. It's probably going to be meta relevant. And the last that I have here is Faker. Faker, if you guys are not aware, is the undisputed GOAT, greatest of all time, best player ever to play League of Legends. So in honor of him, we will put him in here. and put main champ right here. Oh, oops, that is not what I intended to do at all. Kinda dragged the wrong one. So yeah, now a lot of these will be moved. Ahri's probably not gonna be here. I'll have to see what she says first, but for now, just for Faker, we'll put it there. Alright, then we shall look at the cards. Let's go. So the first card in here that we have is Kaisa, Daughter of the Void. Oh yeah, in addition to all that stuff, like I said there, I haven't seen any of the cards, but I did read the rules. So I know the rules of the game, I know how they work. I've also read the Deckbuiding Primer that is available on the website in Riftbound. I will link that as well in the description below, so you guys could also look at that if you want to. It just kind of gives you an idea what the colors do. So in that sense, I do have an idea of kind of what the colors are and what they do. So I can also use that as part of my judgment in judging these cards. Alright, getting back to it here, we have Kaisa, Daughter of the Void. Her effect is tap her at reaction speed. Basically, you don't, or you add the rune for the rune cost. So instead of, so you get a resource to basically pay for the rune cost instead of recycling one of your runes, but you can only use it to play spells. So, based on my experience with basically every card game that I've played, anything that gives you resources are very, very advantageous. You know, anything that is free is always good. It just adds to the tempo, it just adds to options and all that stuff. So it's anything when you get free resources tend to be very, very good cards. Now Kaisa here is limited to only spells, which is the downside, because if they didn't have that, this card would probably be in the Faker tier, I would think, just based on the effect, because recycling a rune is also a huge cost in this game, just because you lose a rune, so you gain it back later on. So when you upkeep, so yeah, losing a rune compared to just being able to use a resource, completely different things. But I guess they really needed to do that just to balance the card. Because I just think this will be the best card in the game if it's not limited to only the spells. Now, with that being said as well, red, it's a very destruction focused color, so they probably have a lot of spell that uses this anyway. But given that there is that limitation, I could probably only see it being one of the better decks, but I don't know if it will be the best deck available around. I don't know if I would put it on the Faker tier just yet. I don't know what the other cards are. If there are not enough cards that will utilize the cost of this, then yeah, it's probably just gonna be in here. But if there's a lot of cheap spells but a lot of rune cost for cards that then will be used for removal, then I could see this actually going up to the Faker tier. That's just kind of how these card games work. You know, again, like I said, they're free resources and you kind of negate the downside of some of the cards. They become really, really good. So that's how Kaisa would be. But for now, yeah, like I mentioned there, we'll keep her at Fed here. I could move some of the cards around too if I see that some cards are better than the others, or kind of like I put a card in Fed, but I think this card is way, way better. That kind of thing. It'll depend. We'll see. Anyway, next one here we have Volibear, Relentless Storm. When you play a mighty unit, you may exhaust me to channel one rune exhausted. A unit is mighty when it has 5 might. Alright, so with Volibear here, this card is kind of nice because you exhaust it to channel a rune. So in that sense, you also get free resources. The problem though with a card like this though is a few things. One, you will need to play a mighty unit. So basically there's a condition that you have to meet, and then you also need to have runes available for you to exhaust. This card will be really good if there are a lot of cheap cost mighty units, but I highly doubt that will be the case if they made a card like this. So what I mean by that is, if for example with 3 runes you have a mighty unit, that will be amazing. For if there's a lot of those, then this card will easily be fed to faker tier, right? To good to really, really good. But because it like this the assumption is because even with the name mighty, these are big dudes, big bodies that you will have to play later on in the game. So basically what's gonna happen is when you get maybe 7 runes, that's when these cards start getting played. And with that being said, because you are putting 2 runes excuse me, 2 runes at every turn, by the time that you're playing a lot of these mighty units, you're probably running out of runes, or the extra rune that you get becomes irrelevant in a sense. So at that point, this card, instead of having an upside, just becomes basically you don't gain anything from it, at least nothing significant, just because of the way I would think how these mighty units are. They are basically mid to late game cards, and at that point the extra runes typically don't matter too much. So I would say I'm not sure if it's winnable or feeding. Just maybe I'll put it on feeding. We'll see what the other cards are. Maybe there are some cards that are worse than this, and maybe I'll move it up on winnable. But it's somewhere between there. You know, it's okay, but it's nowhere near the power level that Kaisa reads as. Next, so what we have here next is Jinx, Loose Cannon. At the start of your beginning phase, draw 1 card if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand. Whoa. Alright, so basically in a lot of the other card games that I've played, aggro is play everything so you don't have any cards in your hand and try to beat them as fast as you can. With this card though, that allows you to basically do that, play as many cards as you can, but you get an extra draw. One of the very, very strong weaknesses of aggro decks in whatever card game that I've played is that basically once you've done everything you can, it's hard to come back if the opponent manages to stabilize against you. With this, you always get an extra option, which to me reads very, very well. Every time an aggro card has extra draw options, that just sounds like trouble. To me, this reads as one of the probably one of the best cards or best legends in the game. Yeah, like I said, they probably wanted to do an aggro deck that just aggro deck, and then if you falter, you still get the extra draw. You can continue playing rather than having one option each turn. So yeah, and then because of the way that works, A, B, C, D, I believe start your beginning phase, so you draw 1 first before you draw your main draw, if I'm thinking that correctly. If that's how it works, it's even better. But yeah, this card is great. Again, aggro getting a lot of draw is kind of crazy, but at the same time, Jinx is a very popular character from Arcane, so I'm not surprised that they made this card really good. I'm very excited for this, and this might be one of the cards that I try to build around, even though I'm not an aggro player, but I do like my card draws in my card games. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, reads very well. Yeah, hopefully the cards around it support it. Hopefully there's a lot of aggro cards in there that you just play, and then basically play all your cards, and then when it's top deck time, it's the big dudes that you play. It just sounds really crazy. Next, Darius. Excuse me. Darius. Hand of Noxus. Tap, reaction speed, and then Legion. Add one energy or one rune power, basically. Abilities that add resources can be reacted to, get the effect if you played a card this turn. Alright. So this card also reads well. It's very similar to, or not very, but it's kind of similar to Kaisa, where you get free resources. Oh yeah, speaking of, Jinx is also a free resource. I need card draw, that's free resource, right? That's more options for you. So this one here, free resources, obviously really great card. This one is, unlike Kaisa, not limited to just spells, and this is just one free rune or free energy, free mana, whatever. The downside to this, though, of course they had to give it a downside, right, is that this, you need to play a card first before you play the Darius to get the effect. But because it is, you get something one cheaper, I just feel like this card is really good. Again, free resources is free resources. It's basically a mana rock there, you know, you just tap it. You just have to play more than one unit, but I'm assuming you could just do that. You could make this in aggro. This is perfect for a mid-range type of deck. Combo decks would probably love this. So yeah, it might even, I think, might be even better than Kaisa actually. Just because you're not so limited to spells, and it's much easier to get this effect. Yeah, because you could also play, like, you know, a cheap thing on your opponent's turn, but the only thing is you have to play two things. But you know, it's having a free mana, so even having to go to 13 is feels a lot better than just simply going to getting one less recycle. So yeah, Darius goes in here. I think that's the perfect spot for Darius. Next is Ahri. So Ahri, the nine-tailed fox. When an enemy unit attacks a battlefield you control, give it -1 this turn to a minimum of 1 might. Okay, so with a card like this, card reads, again, something a little bit more reactionary. So one thing you'll notice is cards that have a lot of conditions to activate kinda tend to be worse. And similar with this, so when an enemy unit attacks a battlefield to control, give it -1 this turn. So your enemy unit has to attack a for you to get the effect, you have to control a battlefield first, and your opponent then needs to attack it. So it cannot be the other way around. When you're attacking the enemy, they have to be attacking you. So in that sense, there's a lot of kind of conditions that need to be met. With that being said, though, this does rely a lot, or this is a combat trick that you just get for free. So automatically a swing -1 might, which is pretty cool when you -1 might your opponent, so it makes it harder for them to attack. If there are other cards as well that gives buffs, or not buffs, gives might, that also helps with this. So it buffs, changes those cards to become, instead of like a +1, it becomes technically a +2, not in terms of numbers. Alright, so in that sense, the card does have some strategy to it. It's definitely something that you could build around, put it in there in winnable. It's something that you build around, but I don't think they are as good as the other 3 cards that are above it right now. And it's also definitely, I believe, better than a card like Volibear. So yeah, -1 to a minimum of 1. They have to attack you, but the thing is, your opponent will always have to attack. If you're both playing the game, right? It cannot be just one place for your opponent. So yeah, so this will be always relevant at point in the game. You attack your opponent, they'll have to attack back to conquer that battlefield, that kind of thing. It's not strong enough to be insanely good. Basically, you could still build a deck around it. It's definitely a cool strategy. Just very, very straightforward effect, and probably will be the baseline. Looking at it, will be our baseline. So if a card is better than this, it's probably gonna go above above her, or winnable. If it basically worse, that card is probably starting feeding, so it's probably our baseline for winnable by how it reads here. Okay, next we have Lee Sin, the Blind Monk. Pay 1, tap Lee Sin, buff a friendly unit. If it doesn't have a buff, it gets +1 buff. Alright, so this card is cool, but the problem is with buffs. Reading the rules for buffs, correct me if I am wrong, but reading the rules for buffs, basically what it is you only get 1. So if you already have a buff, might buff, you cannot get another buff on top of that, which means this effect does not stack. Or if you already have a unit with buff, this effect becomes useless. The other thing with this is not reaction speed, so you have to do it earlier on, which means your opponent can telegraph something like this. You can make a decision right away if they want to deal with it or not. And like I said, it's very, very limited to the +1. That's the biggest downside to this. If the way buff works is that you can put a buff and then more buffs on top of it, then it becomes better, because then you can stack this. Maybe there's an effect that you can reuse your legend, you can untap the legend and reuse the effect again. But if it's only the buff, and then you just get because basically how buffs are, it's like a token, and if you already have one, you don't get another one. It's only limited to the +1. So yeah, I don't think this card is that great. Maybe there's uses for that where buff token, if you have a buff token, you gain more might, that kind of thing, but I don't know. But as of right now, the way it reads, I don't think it is that good. Alright, next we have Yasuo, the Unforgiven. Pay 2, exhaust Yasuo, move a friendly unit to or from your base. Okay, so this card reads very, very well. So if you guys are not familiar with how moving is, so in order to move something, you basically they have to be ready, and then you can only move. And then once you move, you exhaust your unit, and then that's about it. They have to be, if you can ready them, then I believe they can move again, but apart from that, there's nothing that they can do. So Yasuo allows them to basically move after they've already moved once, or move them and then move them again after. Some cards have this thing called ganking, which they can move from base to base. So the combo basically with Yasuo that I could see now is, you move something from a battlefield that has ganking, and then you gank the other battlefield, and you score. So that's pretty good. I think. That's a cool combo. So I believe that's there in winnable. That's a cool. This is one of those cards that you just really want to build around if ever you want to play it. So it's a specific deck. I believe, you know, you probably have units to just have ganking all over, and then you just kind of abuse the fact that Yasuo can move them for free, which is cool. Alright, next, Leona, Radiant Dawn. When you stun one or more enemy units, buff a friendly unit. Alright, so I'm going to talk about Leona here. So this card is a little bit sad based on how you read it. Why is that? So, like we mentioned earlier, a lot of the reactionary stuff or stuff with a lot of conditions needed to them, they tend to be not as good. So this card, what you'll need in order to activate this card's effect is 1. You need to have an enemy unit that's present. 2. You need to have a friendly unit as well, so you can buff them. 3. That friendly unit cannot have a buff, right? Then 4. You need a way to stun the enemy unit. So there's just way too many things that basically have to be present in order for the effect to go off. And when you have things like that, you know, that are just basically all conditions, if this, then you can do the effect. Those cards are hard, very, very difficult to make those cards good, you know. Does that mean that you cannot play Leona? No, not at all. It just, the other decks are just going to be so much better that it's kind of hard to say Leona will be a good legend. I could be wrong though. It could be very much that the cards that are in the set are just so good when it comes to building a Leona deck that this is like the most meta deck. I have no idea, but as the way it reads right now, it just, yeah, it's way too many conditions to meet in order to make the card, I think, stand out or be really good. Alright, next we have Teemo, Swift Scout. You may pay 1 to hide a card with hidden instead of recycling a root. Pay 1, dull the legend, put a Teemo unit you own into your hand from your champion zone or the board. Alright. So, if you guys are not aware, Teemo is the most, well, not the most, but I don't know nowadays. The newer champs might be more annoying just with the way they are designed, but Teemo was really, for the longest time, the bane of a lot of the League of Legends players. This champ was so annoying, you know, it's not even that great. You know, you have a Teemo, you don't know if you're gonna win or lose, but you know that someone's gonna have a bad time. So that's kind of how the Teemo card is, and by reading it, it kind of reads that way, you know, with the hidden cards, because you're not aware, hidden, very, very similar to Quest and Hearthstone. They are cards that you know they are there, you just don't know what's underneath them, right? So a lot of bluffs can happen with that, so it could be really annoying. Sometimes you might not want to play on there just because you don't know what's underneath. But moving forward with that though, with that being said, hidden cards or that kind of effect where you have something that's, you know, it's there but you don't know what's underneath there, eventually once everyone has access to the cards, have played tested enough, you will know exactly what those hidden cards are, because people will only put the good ones in their decks. So if there are, say, 10 hidden cards that are available, it will go smaller and smaller until people found the best ones, you know, because essentially cards like that tend to clog up your deck for the most part, and they're balanced that way so that they're used for hidden rather than just a normal card. Or maybe they're just completely hidden. I'm not sure how they've designed it for this game. I just know that it will be something like that, where you build a Teemo deck, your whole deck is not all hidden. If it is, then that's going to be really, really annoying, and Teemo will probably be up here or here, but I highly doubt that's how they designed it, because that's also unfun to play against, you know, and I'm sure that the designers of this game want people to have fun when playing. So we look at the second effect there. One, doll and put a Teemo unit you own into your hand from your champion zone or the board. So if that Teemo card has an amazing effect, then I could see this being here, because you can just, you know, recycle the Teemo, play it again, and keep doing that each turn. Because until your opponent has a spell removal, because you don't need to actually put them in the battlefield. A lot of the units here get skilled via the showdown, as they call it. But yeah, as of reading that though, I would say that Teemo is probably here. Fits very well right there. There's definitely a lot of potential with the card. This is one of those cards that will probably get better as sets come out, if they continue printing hidden cards as well. But yeah, for now, that's just that there. Nothing else to say. Just this is probably going to be really annoying. I would assume that they didn't want to make this card insanely broken as well, because, you know, imagine the World Championship and Teemo winning. That might be really cool. No matter how annoying this card is, or this character is, people still love Teemo. So yeah. Next, we have Viktor, Herald of Arcane. 1 tap. Viktor, play 1 recruit unit token. So another one here that just essentially gives you something every time, each turn. So it's not necessarily a free. Well, the way you could view this card is that you always have a play. So technically, you always have a +1 card in your hand, one option. Granted that it's not an amazing option, but it's always there, right? So with that being said, that's probably going in there. Assuming that there are also other cards in here that probably works with recruit. I believe they said that yellow, if I can remember the deck primer correctly, involves killing units, so something like that, if I'm recalling that correctly from the top of my head, which means having a lot of recruits can probably kill your own units, and then you get better effects, that kind of thing. So with that, like I said there, you'll always have a unit, so each turn you just play this, and you could always either threat a open battlefield, or if you have nothing, you could always set it up so that your opponent will always need to have the idea that you could have lethal at each turn, because you will always have a unit available, so they can't leave battlefield open when you're getting close to those endgame. So yeah, Viktor's cool, and I think it's gonna be up there. Definitely seems like it will be meta, especially on a set like this where it just come out. A lot of people won't know how to play against this or something like that, and people's decks are not refined. Something like Viktor will kind of just, be good just to start, just because you just always have that extra option. Alright, next we have here Misfortune. Tap, give a unit ganking this turn. Cannot move. It can move from battlefield to battlefield. Alright, so like I mentioned there, Misfortune here, or ganking rather, just you know, you can move from battlefield to battlefield. Now, how good is this effect? Basically, with orange ramping up, you know, you basically, if your unit survives, it becomes a huge threat, because with orange ramp you can play big units quicker, which feels like Misfortune will take advantage of, because you know your big units will survive. Now on your next phase they'll have ganking, they'll move to the other, or wherever you don't have units, or wherever your opponent has units rather. Misfortune will move there, trigger showdowns, kill with their big units. So yeah, basically what I'm saying there is, because it's an orange, giving big units ability to gank has that option to move from battlefield to battlefield right away, to just kill units. It seems very, very good. Now the question is, how quickly can orange ramp, and how big are these units? Right, because if it becomes a race, if Misfortune cannot have those big units fast enough, then your opponent will just be able to set up and run you over. But if she gets ahead, it just basically just spells game over to your opponent very, very quickly, just because while they're playing their smaller units, you are already on your big units with ganking. So anything that they try to take, you can just cover right away, straight up, which is insane. Alright, so Misfortune is probably one of the higher ceiling cards just because of the color that she's in. So she could easily go probably around here, but if she just could not get that card or the ramp fast enough, if that orange is a ramp but they take a while and they're actually a late game deck rather than a quick deck, then might end up being here, because I don't know how fast the game is. I don't know how the cards are. If this is not a mid-range, aggro to mid-range deck, yeah, because what's gonna happen is that, you know, if say your opponent has 8 runes to your 12, and that's when you can start playing your big guys, your opponent won't be as worried into that, right? But you know, I don't know if I'm making sense. I'm just feeling like I'm rambling, but in my head it just makes so much sense that yeah, Misfortune fits a specific, very, very specific thing, specific spot. But definitely high ceiling card, a high ceiling card. Next, we have Sett, the boss. When a buffed unit you control would die, you may pay a rune or recycle a rune and exhaust me to spend its buff and recall it exhausted intent. When you conquer, ready me. Alright, so Sett reads very well. Now the problem with Sett is, like I said there, when we have specific requirements to effects, they tend to make the effects worse. So let's go through it. So you need a buffed unit, they need to die, and Sett needs to not be exhausted. So the only real thing in here is the buff unit, right? So your unit needs to have a buff so that you can spend to use the effect. The rest is probably, the Sett will probably be active anyways. So in that sense, this card reads very, very well. Just you need the buff, right? And obviously you're probably gonna get the buff anyway. And then, so unlike Lee Sin, where when you buff a unit, you just want to keep buffing it, this guy just doesn't care how much, you just need something. and you probably want to trade evenly with something else or more, right? And then when you do that, if the unit they attack it back or you trade, your units will not die instead. That reads very, very well as well. Granted, like I said there, that there is a little bit of whatchamacallit, there's a little bit of needing a specific condition, like I mentioned, but this condition is easy enough to meet, and the upside is so strong that this card just reads very well. You know, your units don't die for a cost of a buff, and recycling a rune, that's whatever, it has to happen anyways. But the fact that your unit won't die, especially if you have big dudes and they're buffed and they don't die, and then now next, like, your opponent will always have that threat in front of them looming, right? So this card seems very good. Would it be Faker tier? Probably right here. The free resources are just so much better, but Sett is still a really good card, and goes up there. Next, so I'm scrolling all the way down here for the Proving Grounds cards here, and then the rest are just in here, the alt arts, and we're not gonna rank those. I'm just gonna read these ones here. Next, Annie, Dark Child, at the end of your turn, ready 2 runes. Whoa, they just made red, purple some of the best cards, no? So, end of your turn, you're ready 2 runes. Why is this really good? It allows you to just have options for your opponent's turn, and more options again is always better, especially when you could do it for your opponent's turn. You could play like a 2 rune in your turn unit, and then your opponent's turn they have to think twice because you have 2 runes up. If you have a spell which it's red, you probably do, you can kill their units and just put on the pressure that way. This card reads very, very well. I know it's only at the end of your turn, unfortunate, but that they have to do that. That, you know, it's not, you know, at the end of your, I don't know, if not when you play a unit ready a rune or whatever, that probably would have been broken anyways. But yeah, this card just reads very, very well at the end of your turn, ready 2 runes. That seems very nuts. Free resources or free things are always good. Essentially what this is you allows you to play a free unit and still have options, right, to do whatever that for your opponent's turn. That, I don't know, that to me just reads, as long as you, anything that you get more options seems very, 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 very good. So I'll have Annie in here. They're these 2 cards, Jinx and Annie, red, purple, they read very, very well. It's kind of crazy. I really hope that the cards in those colors are really good and we're not stuck in mediocrity just because the legends are so good that the cards around them cannot be super good. You know what I mean? Like they had to nerf those cards. But anyway, the next one here is Master Yi, Wuju Bladesman. While a friendly unit defends alone, it gets +2. Alright, so this one here, so you need a unit, a single solo unit, and then they have to basically just defend. The upside though is very, very high, it's a +2. Right, compared to Lee Sin doesn't even go to +2. Yes, you could use it to whatever unit, you can use it for attack, but yada yada yada. This card needs to defend alone. So it's a strategy that you probably will have to build around as well. But again, +2. So looking at the legend, the cost of a buff is probably 1. So 1 might for 1 CP. This gets 2 might for free for just for defending alone. This has a lot of potential to be really good. I believe that goes in there. You know, really, card seems very, very crazy. Not like crazy, sorry, I'm just thinking a lot. But this card seems decent. If it's built around, good card could be doing well as well. So yeah, definitely perfect winnable card. Next we have Lux, Lady of Luminosity. So when you play a spell that costs 5 or more, draw 1 card. Whoa, I like this card the way it reads. Now this card though, I think it's might be limited in a sense that, you know, spell that costs 5 or more, I don't know how much of those are in the game. Thinking how, let's assume that a might or energy is equal to a might, which means 5 cost spells have to be about as good or as good as, you know, close to 67 might units, which means probably not a lot. That would probably mean board wipes, all the whole field effects, that kind of thing. So that's what Lux entails. There's probably insane amount of cool cards around that, but the problem is how often are you gonna play that? Because then this reads like a very control heavy card, right? So the control, you have to think of this as a control deck, just because you have to get to the 5 cost spells, and you have to play spells essentially each turn to make her very good. If not, she's okay, she's still good as long as you could play some of those 5 cost spell. But in order to break her, you gotta be basically playing a spell every turn. Not only that, if you could play 2 of those each turn, then it becomes crazy, right? That 10 rune, playing 2 5 cost spell, and then you draw 2 after, so that they replace themselves. The idea of the card seems very good. Whether or not it's good enough, it's left to be seen. I don't know what the cards, like I said, I don't know what the cards are in the game right now, but the card reads so well that it could be up here, honestly. With that being said though, I might have to put it just down here, just because I don't know exactly what they put in this first set, and it's a scary thought if this card is in here. I think if this card is one of the best cards in the game, this game is, I don't know, I feel like the game's just gonna be broken like crazy when you have control decks that are good like this, because it'll just dominate, I feel. So I think just for the sake of the game, I think they might have had to nerf this card, I feel. Because yeah, like this could have been just insanely good. It has potential to be insanely good. And maybe coming towards the later parts of the game, with the new cards coming out each set, this card could actually get to Faker tier. But as of right now, I think it has to be here. I believe if they were to design the blue-yellow deck, they might be designing it closer for something like Viktor rather than something like Lux, because yeah, that effect is crazy. And you know, if you can basically, what it is in a control deck, if you use basically your big control cards but you're just replacing them, you continually have options. That's just crazy on a control deck. That, okay, yeah, you know, having insane amount of options to just continually control the board. Now it's gonna be grindy, especially when it comes to, like, you know, the games. It's gonna be grindy. Oh yeah, I forgot. I'm just thinking about this in a 1v1 setting. In a free-for-all setting, this card might actually might be designed for that. So that's why it cannot be insanely broken as well, because in a free-for-all, you know, this card might be the best right now too. So I don't know. I'm not thinking about that. I'm just thinking about the 1v1 aspect of it, and this card has potential to be essentially the best card in the game. So I have a feeling that it cannot be right now. So yeah, that's probably why it's in there. And lastly, we have Garen, Might of Demacia. When you conquer, if you have 4+ units at that battlefield, draw 2. Ooh, draw 2. Now this card reads very poorly to me. Why is that? So first off, you have to conquer, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in order to conquer you have to win the showdown, right? To successfully conquer, to actually call something as conquering. You're not just moving into a battlefield. To conquer a battlefield, you have to own the battlefield, which means there's a showdown, you have to win the showdown. So what's wrong with the card? Now that you think about it, right? Yes, you draw 2 to the upside, very, very good, but you need to have 4 units that are alive, right? And it's not like you could have a unit, for example, conquer a space and then play the units after. That doesn't work that way, because this effect happens on conquering. So you have to have units and then conquer after, like, you know what I mean? So you have to conquer either with 4 units at the same time on an open battlefield, or more than that in a battlefield that's not occupied, because you have to not only kill the opponent, but you have to make sure you could live through the blowback of your opponent. So just that alone is already tough, but in addition to that, you gotta have 4 units. That is so many units to have at a time just to attack and get over something to draw 2. Basically, you're doing so much work to draw 2. Insane. And with that, that's why I feel like this card feels really bad. Now, what I am thinking with this card is fully designed for something like free-for-all. 1v1v1v1 or 2v2, where not the focus has to be on you playing the Garen. If you're playing the Garen, the focus is not on you. You probably focus on your other opponents, in which then you can kind of build those 4 units over time. And then you have more options of battlefields to choose from to conquer, that kind of thing. That's where I'm seeing this card is coming from, which it then becomes like winnable or maybe fed even in that kind of setting. But in a 1v1 setting, there is no way, and that is kind of sad, because Garen is one of the OG League of Legends champions, but I guess to some extent they need to also make sure that there's a little bit of balance for the 4v4. That's why they made this. But yeah, unfortunately though, that is the last legend on the list. It kind of sucks to end on there on a bit of a lower note, but that's alright. But anyways, that's kind of the rankings there. I believe Jinx is just insanely good, and Jinx, let's put this picture of Jinx up, the alt art here. I believe that is the best legend in the game. Just the way it reads, aggro with extra draw, insane. Haven't seen a card game that had something like that. It could be that it's so good, that effect is so good that the actual deck cannot be that good. It's very, very possible that is the case, but at the same time, it's also possible that they made this so that they could sell a lot of products. Jinx is an Arcane character, There's no Vi in here, no Caitlyn, so Jinx is the character here. So yeah, very very cool, and I believe that is the best one, followed by Annie. So basically red purple insane teams, like in the insane legends. I hope that the cards are also really good on those. Next we have Darius, Kaisa, Sett, and Viktor for Fed. Those are basically those 6 decks I think are decks that we'll see a lot of in the meta, I believe, followed by Misfortune. And then you have Lux for your main control deck. Then Yasuo, Master Yi, Teemo, and Ahri. Then Volibear, Lee Sin, Leona, and the last but not the least, well, it is the least in this case, it's Garen there. But yeah, so as for me, what am I looking to build? I really wanted to try Jinx. I'm not an aggro player by heart. I don't normally play that style of deck, but something, because I do like having options, but something like Jinx do feel like, you know, I kind of want to dabble a lot with it. Just the idea of having more options as an aggro player, that just feels really good. So we'll definitely play, I'll probably be playing a lot of Jinx here, and then yeah, we'll try out a bunch of them. Definitely probably will try out Annie seems really cool. I'll try Ahri, I'll try Yasuo, I like those colors a lot, so we'll try those, and then yeah, we'll see. There might be a meta that develops, and if I'm going to continue being competitive, I might play those decks as well. So yeah, plenty of options, plenty of cards. Very excited for this game. This game looks very good, so can't wait to be playing this game. And yeah, so that's that for this video. I'll definitely be doing a lot more videos, vlogs here, box openings, that kind of thing. I do have a few series in mind as well, showcasing deck building or ideas and that kind of thing. Deck profiles, we'll be doing some of those as well. And yeah, just a lot of content, so definitely stay tuned for those content. Yeah, it's gonna be a blast. This game is shaping up to be very cool, with a lot of the interaction in between, so it's very easy to like the game for sure. So yeah, definitely stay tuned here, like and subscribe if you want to see more of content in here. A lot of this here, we're just coming in and learning about the game as well. So yeah, we're all gonna start together. You can follow me with my journey with Riftbound. So that's about it for this video here. Like I mentioned there, like and subscribe and drink your veggies.